Hello? Hey everyone. Hopefully the music's okay because I'm not gonna mess with it. With my hair. Oh, jeez, this is confusing. Is that an ad? What the crap is going on? There shouldn't be an ad. Sorry you had to listen to that. I guess there are ads sporadically throughout this playlist, or this video. But yes, hello. It seems like my hair looked better in the mirror than it does on this webcam. It looks weird now, but anyways. Hi Terry! Welcome for saying my hair's lovely. I've been awake for a little while, but I feel like I look like death on screen. Hi Corgi! Hi Summer! Oh. There! Corgi is now a VIP. I keep forgetting about that. Death never looked so good. Well, thank you. Yeah, so I have new blue. My hair is intentionally shorter on one side. It may look better if I straighten my hair, but I didn't have enough time, and I just did weird wave things that I don't know how to do. Aw, thanks guys. Well, it looks like this because I literally got it done Wednesday, and of course I haven't washed it, so yeah, it's very blue. It goes all the way around, like the blue is underneath there. I don't know if you could see that. I don't even know what that looks like, but thank you for shouting out Corgi and Riddy, just in case. Let's see. Does the volume on the music sound okay compared to my voice? Is that an okay thing? No stream tonight like I had in my original schedule. We need to clean. Music seems fine. Okay, thank you. The other thing is, so I'm getting somewhat closer to 150 followers, which isn't much compared to the illustrious Veed Budkey, you know, which you should all be following. And when we do reach 150, I'm going to be giving away a Nancy Drew book. I don't know which one yet. I need to go through. I know I have lots of duplicates, so I am prepared to do lots of giveaways. But I don't want to just do like an unsolicited giveaway. I want it to be for a reason, so if I can start reaching goals, that would be great. Hey, Reddy. Welcome for joining. Yeah, so when we do reach 150, we'll be doing a giveaway for a Nancy Drew book, to be determined. I'm very excited to start this book. And I'll be doing a new stream schedule somewhat soon for February, and we're going to include some indie fam sims, which I know some of you oh, sorry. Must be the weather. Are very excited about. And it will correspond with someone's birthday, not naming names. Hey Joni, welcome for joining. Thank you for being here. Yay for giveaway. So yeah, I think that's really the only announcement. Once we get to 150 followers, I don't know when that will be, we will do a giveaway. So today's book is The Message in the Hollow Oak. It is Nancy Drew number 12. And this edition that I have is interesting. It's got the blue inside cover. So it has to do with Angel's birthday. Her birthday is in February too, isn't it? Aren't there like 3 birthdays in February in the fam? And it has an inside... I'm dropping frames. Inside picture on the title page. And it doesn't have a description in the front, like a lot of them do. And the date is 1935, even though this was obviously not published in 35, or printed in 35, sorry. So I don't know if this is going to be the original story from 35. Like, I need to do a bunch of research on which editions are which stories, which versions, and I plan on doing like a whole spreadsheet of and ends. Yeah, because I remember doing like 3 birthday streams one year. Yeah, so Anne and Angel are like a day apart. Yeah, so eventually I will go through all my indie collection, which I have all of the yellowbacks now, and see which versions I have, try to track down which year they were printed, and all that fun stuff. Not for really any particular reason except to know and to collect, because I know there are a few people out there who do that, and I would count myself among them. I just need to be more knowledgeable. So, OG story, I'd be curious to see how it's different because I read this one recently. Okay, well, if you notice any differences, let me know. 17th for Anne and 18th for Angel. Yeah, the music sounds pretty good still. It's very relaxing. Chill. So, yeah, I think we'll get started. Thank you all for being here. You're lovely. I hope you're having a wonderful Friday. We have some interesting weather coming up because tomorrow it's supposed to get really cold. Or overnight it's supposed to get really cold and maybe snow. So, that'll be interesting. Okay. And I don't know if you noticed. Here, I'll show you. But, in my stream setup here under the chat. Oops, wrong one. Crap chat. Have a little fireplace. And that picture was apparently taken in Ireland, so I feel like that's appropriate. Isn't it cute? I like it. It's adorable. I felt like it went with the rest of the theme, so. Anyways. We'll go ahead and get started. I don't know how long this stream will last, but if anybody sees V go live, let me know. Because I don't want to run into her time. Because I know CJ's there, and they're doing, like, special rare streams, so... yeah. So the first chapter, chapter 1. I love your hair and snow. Aw, thank you, Joni. I don't know what I think about it yet. I mean, I like it. Yeah, I knew what you meant. I like it. I just have to play with it more to see what I want to do with it. I'll probably straighten it, but I don't know, I'm just experimenting. If I see, I shall report a V sighting. Okay, thanks. Plus, I need to, like, clean at some point and pick up Keegan, and I might be getting him early. I don't know. So, also, for anybody who is Life is Strange, or anybody who is a Life is Strange fan, I'm wearing a shirt that Keegan got me for Christmas. It says, "My powers might not last, Chloe." And then it's the railroad thing. And it says, "That's okay, we will, forever." It's just a direct quote from the game in one of my favorite parts. Which, I've been replaying. I like how I said I would start this and I'm rambling. I've been replaying, which I didn't really plan. Because when I was going to replay, I was going to do it on stream. But that's not happening yet. I will do that eventually. I'm getting a tattoo next week. And it's going to be my Life is Strange tattoo, which will be the biggest tattoo I've gotten. It will be in color, which I've not done yet. And it will probably be a half sleeve. Or maybe a full sleeve, I don't know. So I'm saying goodbye to my right arm. The way it is. And we'll see how that goes. I'm sure I will post pics. And I will probably be obsessed with it. I'm very excited about the artist that I'm working with. This was originally going to be me and Sarah's best friend tattoo, but she couldn't do it for different reasons. And so I went ahead and asked if I could just get one for me, and she was like, yeah. So, very exciting. If you want to see this artist's work, she is... let me see. What the heck? Something attacked me. It was a thing. Her name is, W Canada. Her name is Wesley Canada. Yeah, armed with a new tat soon. Pretty rad, yeah. I'm pretty excited. I'm a little nervous because it'll be the longest, most extensive tattoo I've had. I really haven't... Hey V! Welcome for joining! And anybody else who might be there with you. CJ, Holland, Graham, I don't know. Hi! Yeah, if you want to check out her tattoos, she's really good. And I'm very excited to work with her. Thank you! I'm playing with it. It's very blue, and yeah, I don't know about the wave thing yet. I don't really know how to do it. But eventually it'll be straight too. I'm sure I'll do a stream where it's straight. Thank you for shout out. CJ is near. Hello, CJ. I'm just talking about my tattoo that I'm getting next week. Something CJ this way comes. And now that I have bangs again, I'm going to be constantly messing with them. Okay. Spiel is done. Also, if you check out my stories on Instagram, I have commentary about... I need to update that too. Well, no. I have commentary about my replay through of Life is Strange. And it's silly. Some of it's silly, but now more Why do I do this? Why am I like this? Okay, for real. Let's do the book. Okay. A winning title. Carson Drew, attorney at law, private. Nancy frowned as she regarded the neatly lettered sign on the door of her father's inner office. Her pretty face was flushed, and her blue eyes sparkled with excitement. She had such wonderful news to relate, yet it seemed that the door would never open. Conferences took entirely too long. "It's hard to wait," she told Mr. Drew's efficient secretary. "I'd tell your father you were here, but he especially requested me not to disturb him." "Oh, I shouldn't want to interrupt him," Nancy had said hastily. "I imagine the conference is very important, or it wouldn't take so long." "Your father is conferring with Marcus Taylor, I believe." Nancy looked up with interest. "Not the builder who holds such extensive lumber interests in the north?" "Yes, I believe that's the man. At any rate, I know Mr. Taylor is bringing suit against a Canadian company, for I worked on some of the papers in the case this morning." "I've heard a great deal about him," Nancy remarked. "I should like to meet him very much." She lowered her voice just then, for the inside office door had opened. Carson Drew and a ruddy-cheeked individual of about 50 emerged. The latter wore loose-fitting garments and walked along with the easy glide of one who has spent the greater part of his life in the out-of-doors. "Well, Nancy, this is indeed a pleasant surprise." The lawyer smiled at his daughter, turning to present his companion to her. "Nancy, this is Mr. Taylor." Chip off the old block, I'll warrant," the lumberman chuckled. "I've heard it said she could run you out of business, Mr. Drew, if she was of a mind to hang up her shingle." Nancy laughed at the implied compliment and then changed the subject. "I'm taking a vacation from mysteries just now, Mr. Taylor. I'm interested in broadcasting at present." "What? Since when?" "It took me a while to do my hair, okay?" Broadcasting?" her father inquired. "Oh, Dad, that's what I came here to tell you." Nancy could not withhold her news another instant. "I've won first prize in a radio contest." "I didn't even know that you had entered one," Carson Drew returned in surprise. "I did it a short while ago on the spur of the moment, and then forgot all about it until the letter came today. You see, the Velvet Company offered a prize to the person who suggested the best mystery title for a continued story written by Anne Chappelle. I listened to each broadcast because the tale was so interesting. Just for the fun of it, I sent in a title, never expecting to win even a small prize. I was astonished when the letter and deed arrived." "Deed?" her father inquired alertly. "Yes. The Velvet Company also sent me a map so that I might locate the land." This is really weird. I feel like this is the 30s version. After I finish this chapter, I might go and try to find a different copy and see how they compare. "Do you mean to tell me you've been awarded a piece of real estate, Nancy?" "Yes, and I'm so excited about it. I never owned a tract of land before." "Where is this property?" her father demanded suspiciously. "Someplace down in Florida, buried 2 feet underwater?" Nancy took the deed from her pocket and thrust it into Mr. Drew's hand. "Don't look so glum, Father," she said. "It's in Canada, and I'm sure it must be worth something." "Worth the taxes on it," Carson Drew responded dryly. He glanced briefly at the paper, then handed it over to his companion. "You are familiar with Canadian land, Mr. Taylor. Can you tell us anything about this place?" The property seems to be located in the vicinity of Lake Wellington," the lumberman informed the two. "I frequently spend my summers there." "Then is it a nice place?" Nancy asked. "Very pleasant in summer, but cold as Greenland in winter. The land itself is unimproved, valued principally for its timber and mineral rights. But if your property should happen to be located near the lake, it might be used as a summer resort or a fishing camp." "I fear it won't be worth anything," Nancy admitted, a trifle crestfallen. "The best way to find out is to go there," Carson Drew declared cheerfully. "There won't be much chance of that, I fear, from what Mr. Taylor says. It's too great a distance," she sighed. "It isn't that far away," Marcus Taylor smiled. "Wild country, of course, but not a great distance from a railroad." "Why not go up there and look over the property?" Mr. Drew suggested. Nancy stared in amazed delight. "Do you really mean that, Father?" Yes, if you can find some older person to accompany you. I'll be out of town for a week or so on business. That would be an excellent time for you to make the trip. Mr. Taylor, you're not going to Lake Wellington, are you? Nancy asked eagerly. The lumberman shook his head regretfully. I wish I could get away for a few weeks. I'm so homesick for the smell of pine air. Can't make it, though, until my lawsuit is wiped off the slate. But I know a woman who is leaving for the place in a few days. Would she take me with her, do you think? Nancy asked hopefully. She would if I were to ask her. We're old friends. Why, Mrs. Taylor and I have stayed at Mrs. Donnelly's boarding house every summer we've spent in the North. She's a motherly soul and would take right good care of you. Where is she now? Carson Drew questioned. She's expected in River Heights within a few days, I understand. She's been visiting a sister living nearby, but is coming here. She'll be returning to Canada shortly to open up her boarding house for the summer. May I go with her, Father? Nancy asked. If she's willing to take you along, I see no reason why you should not take the trip. I'll speak to her at the very first opportunity. So, she's going to a place she's never been to before with a complete stranger that her father doesn't even know. This doesn't seem like a good idea. I wish Bess Marvin and George Fane could go with me too, Nancy went on, thinking aloud. What a lark that would be! This has to be the 30s. Few persons guessed that George and Bess were girl cousins, so unlike were they in appearance and disposition. Bess was pretty, ladylike, and sedate. She took pride in her person and gave particular care to her luxurious locks. George had cropped her straight dark hair as short as the style would permit, and combed and brushed it as infrequently as possible. It was her desire to be just as boyish looking as she could, and carried out her name as much as she dared. What would you think of Mrs. Donnelly chaperoning the girls and myself? Nancy repeated. I'd feel sorry for the poor woman, her father teased. But all joking aside, I think it's splendid that you have won the tract of land, and I hope it turns out to be valuable. Nancy took leave of the lumberman. Then, with the precious deed in her purse, she carried away to show it to her chums, George and Bess. She hoped that they would be able to accompany her north, for with them in the party, the trip would be certain to develop into a splendid adventure. She tripped along with a light step, so engrossed in building beautiful air castles that she hardly noticed where she was going. The loud toot of an automobile horn sounded in her ears. Looking around, she realized that she was at the busy intersection across from the National Bank. As she waited for a signal that she might be able to cross the street, she saw an elderly lady coming toward her, bent low beneath the weight of a heavy suitcase. Impulsively, Nancy rushed to the stranger's aid. You shouldn't carry such a big load, the girl chided gently. Please let me help you. With a tired sigh, the white-haired woman relinquished her burden. I am almost worn out, she admitted, smiling at Nancy. You see, I expected a man to meet me here, but he failed to keep the appointment. Maybe you've seen him. He'd be in a dark red car. Nancy shook her head. I haven't, but he may be along any minute now. Have you far to go? Several blocks, she replied. However, I must stop at a bank to change a $20 bill. The National Bank is just across the street, Nancy indicated. If you like, I'll stay here with the suitcase while you do your errand. That's very kind of you, I'm sure. It will take me only 5 minutes. The woman cautiously made her way across the street and disappeared into the bank. 10 minutes passed, and still she did not return. Nancy grew a trifle impatient as she waited at the curb with a heavy grip. It would be a good joke on me if she shouldn't come back, the girl thought uneasily. I'm always getting into trouble doing impulsive things. At that moment, a dark red automobile drew up to the curb. The driver, a dapper man in his late 30s, hailed Nancy. I'll relieve you of that suitcase, young lady, he cried. Nancy regarded him suspiciously. I'm keeping it for an elderly woman who is in the bank. Sure, I know, he smiled disarmingly. She's my grandmother. Then you're the man in the red car who was supposed to meet her? That's right. I was held up in a traffic jam. The man stepped from the machine, and before Nancy could protest, took the suitcase and placed it in the rear luggage compartment. I'll run over to the bank and tell her you're waiting, Nancy offered. She hurried across the street. Entering the building, she was greatly relieved to meet the elderly woman just inside the doorway. "Your grandson is waiting for you," Nancy exclaimed. "He drove up in the car, and I left the suitcase with him." "But I have no grandson." Nancy was bewildered. "This man drove up in a dark red car and said you were his grandmother. I hope I've not made a mistake." In panic, she rushed to the street. Her worst fears were confirmed. The man in the red car had vanished. This has to be the 30s version. I'm convinced of it. And I don't have a bookmark. Okay, I'll be right back. I'm going to find another version of number 12. So, just give me a second. Okay, hello. I don't have another version of this, so this is the version we're reading. So that'll be interesting. Let me catch up with chat. Welcome for joining CJ, officially. Okay, let's see. Your dad whipsteed at him. Ooh, yes, comparison. I'm curious because I have a blueback copy of this book. That's 1935. Do you have access to it? Would you like to compare to see if that's the version that I'm reading? I feel like it is. It doesn't feel as modern as it would have been in the 60s. But I'm not sure. I'm tired. Buried Underwater keeps playing in my head, although what else would one call it? She might have to dance for money? Saw your luxurious locks action. Gosh, Nancy, way to believe everything everybody says always. Hello, elderly woman, yells Nancy. Claps for 30s version, chapter 1. What? Hello, CJ. I have the Flashlight series, and this is a completely different book. Flashlight series. Flashlight series. Like, the bluebacks? It is interesting that there's so many versions. We will hopefully get to read about that in our book club, which everybody is welcome to join. By the way, I'll just be the promoter for the book club. Hashtag ad. So if anybody's interested in joining the book club, let me know and I will add you. I would say you do need to have a Goodreads account, but it's easy to make it private and you can use it just for the book club if you want. Like it, if you just want to, yeah, I mean, Riddy made one, Corey made one. As of right now, Keegan is the only boy in the book club, but I don't think he will actually join. He's just a member on Goodreads, so, because I don't think he'll have time to read the book, but yeah, if any males would like to join, you're more than welcome, because it's very female-oriented, which is okay, that's fine. But if we want more diverse perspectives, we should have different people of different genders and all that kind of stuff. Anyways, chicken kernel, popcorn kernels. I just heard the stream from V's computer and wanted to say hi. I'll be listening but not able to respond for a little bit. Oh, sorry for being unable to spell. That's okay, Riddy. Marie Antoinette's kernel. Hi, anything you like, I'm RJ. I find it very uncomfortable typing back and forth when I'm sitting right next to you. Me and Sarah did that whenever she would come over and we would watch streams together. When I visited, the only way she's acknowledged me is through typing messages. Aww, that's so sad. I'm going to wash my hair and be back soon. Okay, be safe in the shower, don't slip. Don't know how you would, but still. Terry, we love you. She won't slip in the sink. Okay. We shall continue. This is the version that we're reading. I don't know what version it is. Someday I will find out. And then I'll be able to actually say which versions I'm reading. And that'll be cool. So, to continue, Chapter 2, The Theft. He's gone! Nancy's heart sank as she realized how easily she had been misled by the man in the red car. She felt responsible for the theft of the suitcase since it had been left in her care. Darn right, Nancy! Oh, it was all my fault, she declared self-accusingly. Was the bag very valuable? Yes, it contained some papers, which I can't afford to lose. Why am I turning all my old ladies into hillbillies? The woman returned, trying to hide her distress. Perhaps the suitcase hasn't been stolen after all. The driver may have actually been my friend." As they hastened across the street, Nancy described the stranger's appearance. He was of early middle age and well-dressed, though somewhat flashily so. His hair was light, his eyes sharp and piercing. "Then it couldn't have been the one who was to meet me, for his hair is dark. Oh, I'm afraid you're right. The bag has been stolen. What shall I do?" "We must notify the police." Nancy had caught a glimpse of an officer at the next corner and hurriedly acquainted him with the details of the daring theft. He glanced sharply at Nancy and questioned her companion further. "Where did you meet this girl? Did you mention to her that the bag contained valuables?" "I met her on the street, and she offered to help me carry the suitcase. I don't believe I told her the bag was valuable until after it disappeared." If you have any doubt as to my integrity, you might inquire of almost anyone here in River Heights," Nancy said proudly. "My father, Carson Drew, is well known in the city." You're Carson Drew's daughter?" the officer demanded incredulously. "Yes, I am." "Then I'll vouch for her honesty, ma'am." "I'm Mrs. Donnelly from Canada," the woman informed the policeman. "I never doubted this young lady's honesty, for I pride myself upon being a good judge of character. The man in the red car stole the bag." Nancy was amazed when she learned the identity of the woman whom she had befriended, though she did not at that moment comment upon the fact. "Did you take the license number of the car?" the policeman asked her. Nancy was forced to admit that she had failed to do so. However, she gave a detailed description of the man as well as his machine. "I'll call headquarters right away," the officer promised. "The cruiser may be able to pick him up." "I'm afraid the bag is gone," Mrs. Donnelly said disconsolately, after the officer had left to find a telephone. "I don't know what I shall do unless I get it back, for it contains my return ticket to Canada." Nancy made a sudden decision. "My roadster is parked on a lot only a block from here. I'll get it and pursue the thief myself." Mrs. Donnelly clutched the girl's arm nervously. "Oh no, you mustn't do that. It would be too dangerous." "I'll take no unnecessary risks. That man has a good start, and if we wait until his description has been broadcast by the police, it may be too late for us to overtake him." "Then see if you can trace the car," Mrs. Donnelly urged gratefully. "But be careful. I'll wait in the bank until you return." Nancy ran to the nearby parking lot, and a moment later had the roadster in motion. She was not very confident that she could overtake the red car, yet it seemed reasonable to her to believe that the thief would take the main boulevard, which led to the outskirts of River Heights. "He'll try to get out of town as quickly as possible," she thought. "If luck should favor me, I may catch him." Luck had always favored Nancy, yet those who knew her well maintained that good fortune attended her largely because of her own efforts. Left motherless at an early age, the girl developed considerable resourcefulness and courage. Her mind was unusually keen. She had warm sympathy for those in trouble, and her interest in mysteries had earned her an enviable reputation as a detective. Her father, a noted criminal lawyer, was very proud of her ability and enjoyed discussing unusual phases of his work with her. Often she helped him clear up puzzling points. Nancy's first case, related in the initial volume of this series, The Secret of the Old Clock, brought her into conflict with an arrogant family, the Tophams. Later, a queer bungalow, a delightful old ranch, a mysterious inn, and even a strange old farm provided background for her sleuthing prowess. Her most recent adventure, is this really necessary? Her most recent adventure, recounted in The Clue of the Broken Locket, resulted in the happy reunion of a war veteran with his sister, and established the bewildering identity of adopted twin babies. Bess Marvin and George Fane, who lived only a few blocks apart, usually shared in Nancy's good times. Yes, you can, Joni. I think you should be able to do that, and if not, let me know and send Terry a link, or V, and they'll post it for you. Nothing piqued the cousins more than to be excluded from a mystery. I wonder what they'll say when I tell them about my meeting Mrs. Donnelly under such queer circumstances, Nancy reflected, skillfully guiding her roadster through heavy traffic. Unless I can manage to overtake that thief, I'll feel a little ashamed to tell the story. I don't know if I have an allow command. Permit. There you go. Okay, it does work. Sorry. Unless I can manage to overtake that thief, I'll feel a little ashamed to tell the story. After all, I should have been more alert. It was stupid of me to have allowed him to get away with the suitcase. She had not liked the stranger's appearance. In fact, she had been reluctant to hand over to him the suitcase. That was written oddly. But because he had driven up in a red car, she had accepted his word that he was a grandson of Mrs. Donnelly. As she reached the less congested part of the city, Nancy put on more speed, driving a little faster than the law allowed. If I'm arrested, I'll have a good reason for it at least. Yeah, you're gonna get arrested for driving over the speed limit, Nancy Drew. She watched closely for the red car, peering up the various side streets as she passed them, but there was no sign of the thief. She drove several miles beyond the outskirts of the city, and after inquiring at a number of filling stations, reluctantly turned back, convinced that she had taken the wrong road. Poor Mrs. Donnelly, the girl thought. I hate to tell her that I have failed. She was approaching a traffic light and accordingly slowed down. Several other automobiles were already waiting for the signal to change. This it did just as Nancy came to a standstill. At that instant, she caught a glimpse of a red car crossing the intersection. The Drew girl accelerated the motor and began the pursuit. Taking the driver of the other car by surprise, she succeeded in drawing abreast of his machine. One glance at his face told her she had made no mistake. He was the man who'd stolen the suitcase. As she tooted her horn, the culprit gave her a panic-stricken look and speeded up. A less courageous driver might have abandoned the chase, but Nancy did not intend to be outdistanced. Again, she overtook the car. "Stop!" she cried. The fellow paid no attention to her command, so his pursuer tooted her horn to attract the attention of passing motorists. Suddenly, with a sharp twist of the wheel, she crossed directly in front of the red car, blocking its path. Either the thief would have to stop or else cause a crash. For one terrifying moment, Nancy thought the fellow intended to keep on. Suddenly, the brakes screeched on the pavement, and his machine came to a quivering halt. The driver sprang out and started to run. "Stop him!" Nancy cried out. "Don't let him escape!" Who was she talking to? By this time, a number of automobiles had halted, and pedestrians were gathering. Two men overtook the thief, dragging him back to the car. "He stole an old lady's suitcase," Nancy cried. "The police are after him." "It's a lie," the man snarled, struggling to free himself. Nancy ran to the back of the red car, raising the lid of the luggage compartment. Triumphantly, she displayed Mrs. Donnelly's property. "The bag is mine," the thief insisted angrily. "This silly girl is mistaking me for another person." However, the crowd seemed inclined to believe Nancy's story. The two pedestrians maintained a firm hold upon the thief until he was turned over to police officers. "If you're innocent, it will be an easy matter for you to prove it at headquarters," Nancy assured the prisoner as he was taken away. "The suitcase will be opened there in the presence of Mrs. Donnelly." "You'll pay for this outrage," the man snapped. Nancy followed the police in her own roadster, pausing only long enough to pick up Mrs. Donnelly, who was waiting in the lobby of the National Bank. "Goodness me, I don't see how you managed to overtake that man so quickly," the elderly lady praised. "I never expected to see the bag again. Oh, I can't thank you enough." At the station house, Mrs. Donnelly promptly identified her suitcase, then confronted the prisoner. She stiffened slightly as she saw him. "Tom Stripe!" she cried. "I've always known you were mean and low down, but I never thought you'd stoop to become a common thief." "You know this man?" Nancy asked in amazement. "Know him? Of course I do. He made trouble between another family and my own. Of late, he's held a grudge against me because of a valuable timber tract I hold near Wellington Lake." "We'll see that he doesn't bother you for some time at least," an officer promised. "A few weeks in jail will do him good." Tom Stripe was led away, muttering to himself. Nancy could not understand what he was saying, but she did not doubt but that he was threatening either Mrs. Donnelly or herself. I wish you would accept a reward for recovering my suitcase, the Canadian woman urged the Drew girl as the two left the police station together. Oh, I couldn't do that. I'm as relieved as you are to get the bag again because I felt responsible for its loss. If you'll tell me where you're staying, I'll take you there in my roadster. Mrs. Donnelly hesitated a moment. I wrote to some friends I was coming. I'm not certain now they are expecting me, for they did not meet me. I'll be glad to take you wherever you wish to go. Then I guess I'll head for the Taylor house anyway. Marcus Taylor and his wife are old friends of mine. I've known Marcus nearly 30 years, ever since he was a lumberjack. I met Mr. Taylor for the first time today, Nancy said. For years, the old homestead has been closed, so the family isn't very well known in River Heights. Marcus spends most of his time in the north. He's a very fine man and a loyal friend. He spoke very highly of you. Mrs. Donnelly looked surprised as well as pleased. Did he say anything about expecting me to visit here? Why, I believe he said you intended to visit your sister and come to River Heights later. That's what I wrote in my first letter. Later, I received word from my sister that she wouldn't be at home for several days, so I wrote Marcus again, asking that his son meet me. I hope he got the letter. No doubt he did. I shouldn't worry about it. I know where the Taylor house is, so I'll drive you there. A few minutes later, Nancy parked her car in front of a rambling, old-fashioned homestead. She carried the heavy suitcase up the walk and set it down on the porch. Anxiously, Mrs. Donnelly rang the bell. I do hope they're at home, she said nervously. Marcus Taylor appeared at the door. From the expression on his face, it was obvious that he was not looking for Mrs. Donnelly. Nevertheless, he greeted her heartily and insisted that Nancy also come in for a few minutes. Miss Taylor's somewhere about the place, he said cordially, taking the woman's suitcase. I'll call her. I can tell you aren't looking for me, Mrs. Donnelly declared uneasily. Didn't you get a letter I mailed from Chicago? It must have miscarried. That's really awkward, Marcus Taylor returned. But that doesn't make a bit of difference. We always have an extra room for you. I've been wanting to see you today anyway, because I have a favor to ask of you. What is it? Mrs. Donnelly smiled. Marcus Taylor winked slyly at Nancy. When you return to Wellington Lake, I want you to chaperone a young lady friend of mine. I'll be glad to do that, Marcus, but I hope she isn't one of these silly modern creatures who can't do a thing for themselves. You should be a judge of that, because you've already met her. Mrs. Donnelly stared at Nancy. Surely he doesn't mean you, she gasped. I'm afraid he does, Nancy laughed. It was a strange coincidence, our meeting. A fortunate one for me, my dear. I'll be mighty glad to take you with me back to Wellington Lake. But tell me, what brings you to such an isolated spot? Nancy explained about the prize contest and impulsively offered the deed for Mrs. Donnelly's inspection. To the girl's satisfaction, the woman put on her spectacles and studied the paper carefully. Well, what do you think of it? Marcus Taylor demanded as she finally returned the document to Nancy. You're a clever trader when it comes to a land deal, Mrs. Donnelly. If you would say the property is valueless, it might save the girl a hard trip. Mrs. Donnelly hesitated a long while before offering her opinion. I don't like to build up false hopes, for one really can't be sure of a thing. I wish you would give me your honest opinion, Nancy urged. After all, the land cost me nothing, so if it should prove to be worthless, I shall have suffered no loss. I think the property would merit investigating, Mrs. Donnelly declared firmly. In fact, it may prove to be more valuable than anyone expects. Meaning what? The lumberman demanded. Meaning that this land is located in a section where gold has been discovered. Few persons know of it yet, for the secret has been carefully guarded. I shouldn't disclose it, only Miss Drew befriended me today, and I always like to repay favors. Marcus Taylor whistled softly. Nancy Drew, it looked to me as if you really won a prize when you selected that lucky radio title. If it should turn out that there's gold on your land, you may make a fortune. A faraway look had come over Nancy's face. Her eyes grew brilliant. Gold, she said half to herself. That settles it. Now I know I'm going to Wellington Lake, and we can't start too soon to suit me. End of chapter 2. This is weird. Gold. I just skimmed through the first chapter and it looks the same, so I think it's the same version. I think you just have a newer copy, maybe. Mine looks older. I can put pictures in Discord. Yeah. Yeah, I think the bluebacks were the originals. I think those were the ones that were actually printed in 1935. Or in the 30s. This wasn't printed in the 30s. It was probably printed in the 60s. But it still has 1935 as the date. So that makes me think that it is the story from the original books. And they reprinted them in the 60s. But this isn't the updated version that they printed in the 60s. If that makes any sense. Thank you for posting that link, Joni. I think I have that link, but I'll open it. Oh yeah. Yeah, I've kind of looked at this. So they have all of them listed. That's so cool. And they have the games. Okay, thank you for that link. I will check it out later. Yeah, I couldn't remember if I had a permit command, because yeah, you can't post links unless you're a mod. I'm trying to figure out if I like my hair. Those modern creatures never doing a thing for themselves. Welcome for clapping. Yeah, this is really strange. It's interesting, but I don't know how many of the books I've read that have been the original stories on stream so far. Maybe one? I don't know. I'd have to go back and look. But it is interesting to compare. Trying to decide if I'm cold. I was really hot earlier. Ugh, I have bags under my eyes. I need my Chloe and Rachel. Oh, my butt hurts. Yeah. Oop. Chloe and Rachel go over here. I'm so obsessed, you guys. Okay. Yeah, you can see him. I mean, you can't really tell what they are, but if you know me, you know. Okay, we shall continue. Chapter 3, A Desirable Paper. In glancing through the mail the following morning, Nancy was pleasantly surprised to find a brief note from Mrs. Taylor requesting Carson Drew and herself to take dinner with her and Mr. Taylor at their home that evening. "How nice of her to ask us," she exclaimed in delight. "You'll be able to go, won't you, Father?" "I think I can make it," the lawyer promised. That's not a promise. "It will give me an opportunity to talk with Mrs. Donnelly and discover if she will make a satisfactory chaperone for your northern trip." "She'll prove satisfactory as far as I'm concerned. I know that. If what she says is true about the finding of gold..." "I'd not put much stock in that story, Nancy. It's not likely that a company would give away such a valuable piece of land." "Not if they suspected it to be extremely valuable, of course. I suppose it is foolish of me to hope, yet I can't help but feel lucky about this property. What's more, if Bess and George go with me, I know I'll have an exciting trip." Nancy had told her chums about the proposed vacation the previous day. Both girls were very eager to go, and now when Nancy called at the Marvin home shortly after breakfast, she found them there discussing the prospects. "All aboard for Lake Wellington," George greeted her gaily. "Will you really be able to go?" Nancy questioned eagerly. "I think so. Mother has practically consented." "How about you, Bess?" "I don't know yet. I've been coaxing and coaxing, but my parents are very conservative. They're afraid it's too long a trip for 3 girls to make by themselves. We won't be alone, Nancy said. Mrs. Donnelly has promised to take us if our parents wish. If I don't go, I'll be just sick about it, Bess declared disconsolately. Cheer up, Nancy encouraged. I'll have Father talk with your parents. That may help. The girls fell to discussing various details of the proposed trip, including the clothes they were to take along. Bess was inclined to want to pack her best dresses, but Nancy discouraged her, pointing out that they would need sturdy shoes and rough, warm garments in the woods. Presently she glanced at the clock and was startled to see how quickly time had passed. I must hurry home, she announced, rising. I promised Hannah I'd bake a chocolate cake for luncheon. If I don't get started with it soon, I'll never get it ready in time. Hi, Shannon. Welcome for joining. She found kindly Mrs. Gruen, the middle-aged housekeeper, busy in the spick-and-span white kitchen. Thanks. Thanks for, I think this piece has gotten too straight. It's not, I don't know. Sorry. I thought you wouldn't be here, Nancy. Why are all my accents hillbilly? I'm trying to do, like, different voices. I'm not an actor, but... I thought you wouldn't be here, Nancy, she remarked as the girl donned an apron. I'd have stirred up the cake myself, only the ones I make never come out as well as yours do. Flatterer, Nancy laughed. It was you who taught me how to bake chocolate cake. So I did, but the pupil has gone beyond the master. Oh, by the way, there was a telephone call for you this morning. From one of the girls? No, it was from a man. He wouldn't give me his name. That's strange. Doubtless it was a salesman. Nancy forgot about the phone call as she busied herself with the cake. She was to recall the incident later, however, and to speculate upon its significance. Promptly at 7 that evening, the Drews presented themselves at the Taylor home, where they were warmly welcomed. Nancy was delighted to observe that her father and Mrs. Donnelly took an instant liking to each other. During dinner, the conversation centered about his daughter's newly acquired property. I shouldn't mind owning that property myself. Mrs. Donnelly smiled warmly at Nancy. It may turn out to be worthless, yet it presents a wonderful speculation, in my opinion. If there should be gold... She did not finish the sentence, for a servant at that moment entered the room to say that Nancy was wanted on the telephone. Excusing herself, the girl went to answer the call, and she was away several minutes. When she returned, everyone noticed the strange expression on her face. Father, did you ever hear of a man named Raymond Niles? She asked quickly as she resumed her place at the table. The lawyer shook his head. It's strange, Nancy went on. He wanted to buy my property. How much did he offer you for it? Mr. Drew questioned. $100. He must be a swindler, Mrs. Donnelly announced before the lawyer could offer a similar opinion. If the land is worth a cent, it's worth far more than that. That's what I thought, Nancy said quietly. I told him my ground wasn't for sale. Did that satisfy him? Her father asked. No. Then he also asked to see my deed. He was very persistent. I'd have nothing whatever to do with him, Nancy. I don't intend to. I made him understand that I would not show the paper to anyone. I probably won't hear from him again. In this hopeful opinion, Nancy was destined to be greatly mistaken. The following afternoon, as she was walking slowly toward the public library, a handsome young man with curly blonde hair and a sophisticated smile accosted her at a street corner. Miss Drew, I believe? Yes, Nancy assented, trying not to stare at the youth's clothes, which were in the height of fashion and cut far too elegant in appearance for River Heights. I'm Raymond Niles, he declared disarmingly. Nancy stiffened. I'm sorry, Mr. Niles, but I don't care to sell my property to you. Oh, I understand that, Miss Drew, but it adjoins some land which a friend of mine owns in Canada, and for a certain legal reason I should like to examine the deed. I can't show it to you, Nancy returned, growing annoyed. Please permit me to pass. Instead of standing aside, the man fell in step with her. I shouldn't mind paying you a small consideration. As far as I'm concerned, the subject is no longer of interest to me, Mr. Niles. If you don't stop annoying me, I shall call a policeman. All right, if that's the way you feel about it. The young man abruptly turned away. But I'm warning you, you'll be sorry later that you didn't deal with me. Nancy was somewhat disturbed by the incident and reported the encounter to her father. I should notify the police, he told her thoughtfully, but that would advertise the fact that your land may be valuable. It seems to me we ought to let the matter rest for a while. In any event, you will be rid of this fellow in a few days, for soon you'll be on your way to Canada. Mr. Drew had been favorably impressed with Mrs. Donnelly, and had completed all arrangements for the Canadian woman to chaperone Nancy, Bess, and George to Lake Wellington Lake. After a long talk with the attorney, Mrs. Marvin had agreed that her daughter might make the trip. The girls were so excited they could hardly wait until the day scheduled for their departure should arrive. Hannah Gruen, however, did not entirely approve of the proposed vacation. In my day, girls stayed at home. It wasn't considered proper for them to be running all over the country alone, much less to foreign places. Yeah, Canada. We're not going alone, Nancy laughed, and one cannot really speak of Canada as a foreign country. Just the same, I don't know what your father is thinking of to let you go. It isn't safe up there in the woods. You may get lost, or something else terrible may happen. Mark my words. Mrs. Donnelly has lived at Wellington Lake most of her life, and she's older than you, Nancy chuckled. I'll send you a postcard every week so you'll know I'm still alive and healthy. 2 days before the scheduled departure, Raymond Niles telephoned the Drew home. You haven't changed your mind about that deed? He inquired a trifle insolently. No, Mr. Niles, Nancy retorted. She hung up the receiver before he could continue the conversation. The precious document reposed in the top drawer of a desk in Mr. Drew's study. Nancy would have felt better about it if it had been placed in a less obvious hideaway. However, it seemed foolish to go to the trouble of taking it to the bank vault for such a brief period, since she intended to carry it with her on her journey north. Time was growing short, and Nancy was too busy packing to give much thought to Raymond Niles. Once Bess had caught the fellow lurking about the Drew home. A dozen times a day the cousins would run over to the house to chat excitedly about the trip, or to seek advice concerning their wardrobes. Everything's ready, Nancy informed Hannah as she finished strapping the last bag. Our train leaves at 7 tonight, and I'm going to the bank now for some money. If anyone should call while I'm away, tell him I'll be back in half an hour. She was gone from the house longer than she had anticipated. Upon returning a little past 4 o'clock, she entered the kitchen to find it deserted. Hannah, she called. Coming, the housekeeper rejoined from the general direction of the study. An instant later, the woman bustled into the room. Oh, Nancy, I'm so glad that you've returned, she began anxiously, for I didn't know what to do when the man came for the paper you promised him. What paper? The girl asked quickly. A deed you keep in the desk drawer. This chap was mighty handsome, and said he was a good friend of yours. You didn't give the paper to him? Nancy demanded in alarm. Yes, I did, but he's still in the library, for I told him to wait there. Oh, I hope I haven't done anything wrong. Nancy darted toward the study. As she had feared, it was empty. Raymond Niles had tricked Hannah. Panic-stricken at the thought of losing the valuable paper, Nancy raced toward the front door. She caught a glimpse of the man moving hurriedly across the porch. Wait! She called sharply. As he wheeled about, the girl sprang forward and caught him by the arm. Give me my deed! She cried. The man tried to thrust the document into his pocket, but Nancy snatched it from him. You're a trickster, she accused the fellow. Leave this house at once, or I'll turn you over to the police. Raymond Niles muttered something Nancy could not catch. She closed the door in his face. I thought he was a friend of yours, or I'd never have trusted him, Hannah said in distress. I couldn't have forgiven myself if I'd let him steal that deed. Don't worry about it now, the girl returned kindly. It wasn't your fault. Anyway, I saved it, and that's all that matters. The few remaining hours before train time passed. The few remaining hours before train time passed all too swiftly. Many friends telephoned Nancy to bid her goodbye, while an even greater number of gathered at the railroad station to speed the girls on their journey. Hannah was quite tearful as she bade her young mistress farewell. "I won't rest a minute until you're safe back in River Heights," she declared. Nancy glanced uneasily about the station platform. It seemed to her that everyone in River Heights had gathered there. That is to say, all save her father. She wondered what could be keeping him. He had telephoned her at the house, telling her he would meet her at the station, but the block signal now warned her the train was approaching, and still Mr. Drew had not appeared. "What can be delaying Father?" she fretted. "I can't start off without saying goodbye to him." At that instant, Bess caught sight of the attorney driving up in a taxi. Nancy rushed over to greet him. "What kept you?" she asked tremulously. "I was afraid you weren't going to get here in time." "So was I," Carson Drew returned, clasping her hand. "Nancy, several things have happened since I saw you last. I'm not sure, but that it's a mistake to allow you to make this trip." "Oh, Father, I'll not change my mind about it now, but I must warn you to be very careful. I'm a trifle uneasy over this land of yours." "I don't understand." "There's something going on that I don't exactly like." Carson Drew spoke hurriedly, for the train was almost in. "I just learned that Tom Stripe is out of jail on bond." "What has that to do with my land?" "Perhaps nothing. However, bond was furnished by Raymond Niles, indicating that they are friends and crooks." "Undoubtedly. Now, the association may mean nothing at all, but while you're at Wellington Lake, be on the lookout constantly for trickery." "I shall do so," Nancy promised seriously. Carson Drew bent down to kiss his daughter goodbye as the train came thundering into the station. A moment later, Nancy stepped aboard, and with Mrs. Donnelly and her chums, she began the long journey to Wellington Lake. End of chapter 3. Is that Sherlock and Watson? You could say that. You definitely could say that. Although I feel like that's more apt for Max and Chloe. I'm going to put my blanket on. I just realized I'm not eating anything at all. I'm hungry. I wasn't hungry this morning, really, but I'm hungry now that I'm streaming and reading, which makes it difficult to, eat. Thank you for, liking my hair. Thank you for shouting out, Shannon. Nancy, she said it's disconsolately. I'm probably not pronouncing it very well. But that chocolate cake, though. Hill Bessie. Maybe you just imagine all these characters are Southern, which is hilarious since the ones I'm giving accents are from Canada. Show me the deed through the rotary phone. That's what I was thinking. This man could be dangerous. Ah, well, have fun, Nancy. What's a paper? What's a deed? You gave him the paper? Indeed. Just wear a helmet. You done grand, Sammer. You done grand, Sammer. Sumer. I can only write what Mobile says. Apologies. That's okay, Riddy. Sammer? Oh, I'm hungry. I've not even been reading an hour, though, so... Okay. Sorry, Sarah's texting me. Sumer! Okay, chapter 4. Okay, really, chapter 4. With the blanket, it looks like my hair's almost the same length. A train wreck. Or not. I'm bad. Mrs. Donnelly ordered her berth made up shortly after she boarded the train. Nancy and her chums were far too excited to sleep, however. They wandered into the observation car, where they interested themselves with various magazines and newspapers. Soon Nancy became absorbed in a fascinating story entitled The Vital Hour, but casually glanced up from her reading as a distinguished-looking woman of about 35 entered the car and took a seat nearby. "I see you're reading one of my stories," the newcomer presently remarked. Nancy looked up with interest. "Then your name is—" "That particular story is published under a nom de plume. As a rule, I use my own name, Anne Chappelle." Nancy stared. "You're not Anne Chappelle who wrote the story for The Velvet Hour?" "Yes, I am." The other smiled. "Why, I follow them all over the radio. If it hadn't been for you, I shouldn't be on this train now. You see, I won the mystery story title contest and am on my way to Wellington Lake, Canada, to look over the piece of property which I was awarded." It was Miss Chappelle's turn to be astonished. "Then you must be Nancy Drew. I knew your title had been selected, but I never dreamed I'd ever meet you in person." "Do you expect to write another radio skit soon?" Nancy inquired hopefully. "Not for some time, I imagine. I'm now busy with a novel, and my movie contracts keep me occupied steadily." "Then you write scenarios, too?" "Yes, that's the type of work I like best." "You must know many of the famous actors and actresses." "I do," Miss Chappelle acknowledged. "However, I must confess I attend but few parties. I don't care a great deal for social activities." The woman lapsed into a moody silence, which Nancy hesitated to interrupt. She suspected that Miss Chappelle had some secret sorrow about which the public knew nothing. Despite her interesting life, the young writer seemed to be very unhappy. "I hope you will find time to read my latest novel when it's published," Miss Chappelle remarked a few minutes later. "But then, I may decide not to bring it out after all, for it's too revealing. It follows very minutely the unhappy pattern of my own life." Nancy was on the point of asking a question, but the words died upon her lips, for suddenly there came a shrill whistle from the train engine, followed by a terrific crash. Nancy was flung headlong from her seat. Splintered boards, battered furniture, and debris descended upon her. For a moment the girl was too stunned to move. Then, as she squirmed to a sitting position, she became aware of a sharp pain in her arm. Carefully she moved it, relieved to discover that it had not been broken. A trickle of blood oozed from a cut in her forehead. All about her she could hear people groaning. The first panic-stricken screams of the passengers had died away. Cries of suffering had taken their place. The Drew girl staggered to her feet, looking about for Bess and George. The latter was half hidden under a pile of observation car chairs. "I'll get you out in a minute," Nancy encouraged. A moment later she helped the stunned girl to her feet. "What happened?" George murmured in bewilderment. "There's been a wreck. Are you hurt?" "Only shaken up a bit, I think. Is Bess safe?" "I haven't found her yet. She was sitting right beside me when the crash came." Anxiously, the girls began to move the debris, peering carefully beneath each pile. A low moan drew them to the place where their chum lay. Her face was so white they thought she must be seriously injured. "Bess!" Nancy dropped to her knees. "Where am I?" the victim mumbled incoherently. Tenderly, the girls lifted her and carried her to a level spot outside the car. Nancy chafed her friend's hands and spread out her coat for Bess to lie upon. "Don't bother about me," she directed presently. "I'm dazed from a blow I received on the head, but I'll soon be all right. Help the others." "Let's try to find Mrs. Donnelly and Miss Chappelle," Nancy suggested. Anxiously, she and George looked about for the two women, but did not see them among the little group of those uninjured. Returning to the observation car, they aided a child who had been pinned under a steel beam and lifted out a boy with a broken leg. Almost every car had jumped the track. "Geez, this is rough." Nancy noted that the coach which Mrs. Donnelly had occupied had received the brunt of the impact. Nearby sections were afire. The flames, whipped by a strong south wind, were spreading rapidly. "Get some helpers and see if you can find Miss Chappelle," Nancy called to George. "I'll make certain that Mrs. Donnelly is safe." It was difficult for Nancy to ignore the pitiful cries of the injured passengers as she hurried past them, yet she felt that her first duty was to her friends. If Mrs. Donnelly had been trapped in her berth, she might be burned to death. The car she was in had been converted into a tangled, twisted mass of steel. Nancy grew bewildered as she tried to locate the place where her chaperone might be. Flames were creeping ever closer and closer. "Won't you help me?" she appealed to a man nearby. "I'm afraid a woman is trapped inside this car." And the fellow shook his head regretfully. "I must search for my own little daughter first. The wrecking crew will be along soon." It may be too late then, Nancy thought desperately. This is dark. Over and over she called Mrs. Donnelly's name, but there was no response. All about her, women were crying hysterically, while children were sobbing and searching for their parents. Nancy felt physically ill, yet she continued pulling away debris, working desperately to beat the creeping line of red flame. Just then, George came running back to help her. "Have you found Miss Chappelle?" Nancy asked. "No, I've hunted everywhere. I'd have kept on looking, only I thought you might need me here." "I do. Oh, George, I'm afraid we'll not get to her in time." At that moment, a glad shout went up, for the wrecking crew had been sighted. "Thank goodness, they've come at last!" Nancy exclaimed. Even as she spoke, a burning brand, carried by the wind, dropped at her feet. She stamped it out, but still others fell about her. In another minute, the car would be afire. Do I need to change this to, not family-friendly? This is getting... it is for children. These books are for children, but... this is way darker than I was expecting. Far be it from me to tell people to eat when I'm not eating today. Terry? Should I be worried about you? Do you need to eat something? 30s children, way darker times. Laughs at cries of suffering. No, I was just kind of appalled. I didn't expect it to be so... Ritty. No, literally, there's no space. A fire. That's... to become a fire. I don't know. Well, let's keep going. Find out what happens. Chapter 5 is called Disaster. No, I'm not judging you. I'm just... we both need to eat. Oh, you're aware. Okay. We both need to eat, Terry. Okay, disaster. Nancy and George stood helplessly by, watching the wrecking crew at work. The girls had done all they possibly could to assist the injured passengers. Now they must wait and hope. In response to Nancy's frantic plea, the wrecking crew had bravely battled the fire, removing several persons from the flaming car Mrs. Donnelly had occupied. The chaperone, however, had not been among those rescued. "Are you sure she was in this coach?" "Are you sure she was in this coach?" one of the workers asked Nancy. "Yes, she occupied section 14. I know she was inside at the time of the crash." "We may find her yet," the man returned with forced cheerfulness, "but it does look bad." "It's possible she was rescued before we got here," George said hopefully. Nancy nodded, trying all the while to keep up her spirits. She could not acknowledge to herself that Mrs. Donnelly might be dead. The night was very black, the only illumination being that provided by torches and lanterns brought along by the wrecking crew. Many of the injured passengers had been removed to hospitals and nearby houses. It was possible that in the confusion they had failed to see Mrs. Donnelly. This hope gave them fresh courage. "We may as well go back to Bess," Nancy proposed, "for we can do no good here." The girls found Bess in much better condition than when they had left her. She was wrapped in a warm blanket to protect her from the cold night air. "How's Mrs. Donnelly?" she asked instantly. It was not easy to tell her the truth. "She hasn't been found yet," Nancy said quietly, "but we still have hope." Bess was silent for a time. Then she said soberly, "This wreck has been a terrible thing. It was dreadful to sit here and see the workers carrying people past on stretchers. I hate to think that anything has happened to Mrs. Donnelly or to that new acquaintance of yours, Nancy. Miss Chappelle? Yes, she hasn't been found either. I don't believe she was seriously injured, for almost everyone in the observation car escaped lightly. Nancy said thoughtfully, It's a mystery what became of her. A great many strange things have happened tonight, Bess declared significantly. For instance, what could have caused the wreck? The men said it was an open switch, George told her. I suppose it was an accident, all right, Bess agreed. But I grew suspicious when I saw Raymond Niles and another fellow in the throng here tonight. Nancy and George exchanged quick glances. They could not decide if Bess actually had seen Niles and a companion or if she had imagined it. Bess guessed what the two girls were thinking. Oh, I know you believe I was too dazed to recognize anyone, but I did see Raymond Niles. Can you describe his companion? Nancy questioned. Not very well, I'm afraid. He was about 40 years of age, I should say. A dapper sort of man, though not as well dressed as Niles. Nancy recalled the information her father had given her just as the train had pulled into the River Heights station. Raymond Niles had provided bail for Tom Stripe. Bess's description fitted the latter very well. Could it be possible that the two had boarded the train with the intention of following Nancy to Wellington Lake? I must be on my guard, she thought. But I'll not worry Bess and George by telling them what I fear. If anything has happened to Mrs. Donnelly, we'll not go to Canada now, anyway. For nearly an hour, the three girls remained at the scene of the wreck. At the end of that period, Nancy's nerves began to give way under the strain. It was then that her friends observed that she too had been injured. You must see a doctor immediately, Bess insisted. It's nothing, Nancy maintained. I'll be quite all right after a night's rest. If we only knew what has become of Mrs. Donnelly and Miss Chappelle. You'll worry yourself ill if you don't stop worrying. Oh, you'll make yourself ill if you don't stop worrying, George advised her kindly. I can't help but feel they are both safe. We should know the worst by morning, Nancy said quietly. There's no purpose in our remaining here. I suggest that we spend the remainder of the night at a hotel. I'm sure there must be one in the vicinity. The others readily agreed to the suggestion, for they were exhausted from their harrowing experiences. A conveyance carried them to a nearby town, where they engaged a room at the Hamilton Hotel. Before retiring, Nancy sent a telegram to her father, telling him that she was safe. Bess and George dispatched similar messages to their parents. I believe I'll not be able to sleep a wink, Bess declared nervously, as her chums tucked blankets about her. I feel positively unnerved. So do I, Nancy acknowledged, but we should be thankful we're alive and uninjured. And that our luggage wasn't destroyed, George added. Nancy, did you manage to save your property papers? Yes, they were in my purse, which I never let out of my hand. Nancy indicated the pocketbook which lay on the dresser. Bess regarded it fixedly, then closed her eyes and dropped off into a troubled sleep. George, too, was so exhausted that she fell into a deep slumber almost the instant her head touched the pillow. At first Nancy was so restless and worried that she could not sleep, though presently she dozed off. She awoke when it was yet dark to experience a strange sensation. It seemed as though someone had called to her. Sitting up, she looked about the hotel room. George was sleeping peacefully at her side. She looked toward the bed occupied by Bess, but it was empty. Thoroughly alarmed, Nancy thrust aside the covers and sprang to the floor. She tried the outside door and found it still locked from the inside. She next ran to the open window. A low cry of horror escaped her as she gazed downward. Bess, apparently walking in her sleep, had climbed out upon the fire escape. Then she had descended until she was on a level with a window ledge. At the moment she stood teetering upon the narrow slab of concrete. At any instant she might plunge to her death. Nancy's low cry had disturbed George. What is it? She murmured drowsily. Don't make a sound, Nancy warned fearfully. Come here. George crept to the open window. As she beheld the sight below, she stifled an exclamation of fear. If we awaken her, she'll be sure to fall, Nancy whispered, shuddering as she glanced down at the garden several feet below. I'm going to try to get her. It was a mystery how Bess had managed to climb over to the narrow ledge. She was poised far out of reach. Even from the fire escape, Nancy could not assume the same position without risking her own life. I'll have to try some other way, she decided, returning to the bedroom window. We can never rescue her alone, George said. I'll run downstairs for help. She drew on a robe, then disappeared. Left to herself, Nancy watched Bess fearfully. The girl would be safe if she would remain where she was, but at any moment she might take a step forward, which would send her hurtling into the garden. Unable to endure the suspense of waiting for help, Nancy rushed to an upstairs hall. Her eyes suddenly fell upon a coiled rope that a workman had left that day. Snatching it up, she ran to a window directly over the spot where Bess was standing. A minute later, George, followed by 2 frightened hotel attendants, raced back into the vacant bedroom. There she is, George cried as she pointed out the ghostly white figure upon the ledge. Her words ended in a shrill scream. Bess's foot had slipped. The horrified observers saw her pitch forward and fall toward the garden. This is dramatic. I missed the dark part. Can anyone summarize? So they're all on their train on the way to Canada, right? There was a train wreck. I kid you not. Horrific. And they have not found Mrs. Donnelly, the lady that was chaperoning them. And then there was a girl that Nancy met who wrote the story that she won the prize from. I don't know. And she's missing too. And now Bess is sleepwalking to her death. Okay, that is not in my 70s edit, right? Dude, I'm so lost. This is nothing like my version I just read. I'm actually flipping through my copy. Yeah, so I'm reading the original version, apparently, which I don't have the other version right now. So, I'm really going to have to catalog these. Welcome for joining, Lexi. I'm the 72 edit. Yeah, I'm reading the first edition. Although, it was it wasn't printed in, it was printed like in the 60s. But it's the 30s edition. I didn't realize they'd be that different. I thought they mostly edited out offensive terms and changed trains to planes and stuff. I was trying to follow Nancy's mysterious letter and it's nothing like the edit. Huh. Classic Bess, sleepwalking into danger. We'll have to watch the VOD. Oh, she has the dust jacket. I don't have the dust jacket. It's the... It's a version printed, like, in the 60s, but it's the 30s story. So, like, it's a yellowback, but it's the 30s story. So it wasn't updated. Yeah, the dust jacket for Clue in the Old Attic. I have some bluebacks and some dust jackets, but, yeah. I'll show you guys when I, catalog them all. That's wild. As train wrecks often are, I'm not worried about them. I'm breakable after all. Wait, is that from that movie? How is a yellowback the original? Well, that's what I'm saying. This book was not printed in the 1930s, right? It was published in the 1930s, but it was printed in the 60s. Although they don't have the date of the printing on there, they just have the date of the publishing. So that's how you know that it's the original story, because it says copyright 1935. But this obviously isn't a first edition copy. It's a yellowback. So it was printed in the 60s. So they probably did reprints of the old versions at the same time that they updated them and made new versions. I will look at that site that Joni linked and let you guys know, because I'll read up on that and try to figure it out. But I think that's the situation. I didn't realize some of the yellowbacks were unedited. I didn't either until we started reading this. But that makes sense, right? So there's so many versions. There's so many published versions, which is why I think it's so fascinating. Now I'm going into nerdy librarian wannabe spiel. But yeah. Isn't that weird? What's a toilet print? Throws long manuscript into toilet. What? I have a few of those 60s editions with the the toilet-like printing. Yeah. And you can tell which versions they are based on like what's inside the cover. Because the other yellowbacks that are the updated story, I think they're black and white inside. I need to find unedited yellowbacks. Yeah. So that's why the collection could be so vast, because there's so many different versions. So like I'm gonna have to write down which version I have. So you could collect 3 versions of this book, right? Because you could collect the original first edition blue book, then this one, the yellowback unedited, and then the yellowback edited 60s version. Right? Isn't that nuts? And then if you really wanted to, you could get the modern printing, which, who wants those? And you never know where you're gonna find them either. Like the bluebacks were the first that I had ever seen. And I found those in Michigan, actually. I was in Lansing, and I was at some used bookshops, and they had a whole section in the back of Hardy Boys and Nancy Drew, and they had a bunch of them, but they were really expensive compared to the other ones, so I had to choose which ones I wanted. So I got Shadow Ranch, the blue book. Do you want me? I'll go get my blue books, because I know where they are. So they are donated all the time to the library. I bet they are. I have 3 that I found at garage sales in Michigan. Yeah, you never know where you're gonna find them. It's French for those fancy old fabrics. Toile? Or toile? I don't know. I don't know French. I know ballet French, but that's it. And donation. I'm really hungry, so I'm probably going to have to cut the stream here. But let me go get those bluebacks, and I will show you guys what I have. Do you want me to post pictures of the original? Yeah! Yeah, do it. Of course. The number 12 book I have says it was made 1972, but printed 2002. Same title, but completely different story. Okay, so they edited this. It is number 12, so it makes sense that it was edited later. Oops. Here, let me, permit you, Corgi. I'm sorry. My hair's not purple. It's not supposed to be purple. It's blue. But I hope you like it anyways. That's okay, Ann. We're being nerds, and I love being nerds with you guys. It's my favorite. I'm glad somebody understands. Keegan sure doesn't. My hair's blue. It might look purple on your screen, I don't know. Although there is a section that kind of looks purple. I think it's on this side, but... Oh, okay. There's the... I'll open the link. Do you guys like this music, by the way? I liked the first few minutes that I listened to. It looks like Chloe, you think? Well, thank you. That's a big compliment for me. Chloe's gonna probably be my focal point of my tattoo. I'm not gonna lie. Depending on how I end up. The music is alrighty. Okay. I thought my hair color before this was more Chloe-esque, but anyways, I still appreciate it. It's still inspired by her, because it's blue. Because I didn't dye my hair until after I played that game. Okay, I will be right back. I'm gonna go grab the blue books that I do have, and then we will nerd out together. So, be right back. Okay, that didn't take very long. So I have three. I have three bluebacks, and two of them have the dust covers. They're not in great condition, but we match. I have the clue of the tapping heels. And it's not attached, so you can see that it's the original. Pretty cool. I think it's really cool. And then here it is on the inside. So 1939, and I still have to confirm this, but I do believe that means it was, because it's the blue book, it was published, or it was printed in 1939. Published and printed in 1939. Wait, what number is this? Yeah, 16. That sounds right. Okay, so that's one. I have The Secret at Shadow Ranch. And this one is a different blue book version than the other one. Because did you see how the texture compares? They're different textures, right? Isn't that weird? So there are multiple blue books too. Which is why it's gonna be... This is why I'm gonna, you know, catalog all these and try to determine which year they were actually printed. That is the challenge. You have one as each. Oh, okay. Yeah. So this is Shadow Ranch. And this is cute. So yeah, they have different insides too. Oh, this is the picture that I have on my Be Right Back screen. See? Here, sorry, wrong Be Right Back screen. In the corner there. That's fun. And this is cute because it has somebody's name in it. Elizabeth Hardin, who could be related to one of my relatives, actually. I have a relative whose name is Hardin. Elizabeth Ellen Hardin. Durand, Michigan? Does that... Shroom, do you know? Yeah, I have one. Oh. Monroe Road. I can't quite read the... Starts with a D. It looks like D-U-R. Then I'm not sure. Durand. Okay. Well, that's near Lansing. Well, that makes sense. That makes sense. This one is 1931, and judging by the pages and how fragile they are, and the fading, the coloring, I think this was published in 1931. So, I'm wondering if the other blue books are younger, maybe? I'm not sure. I think the spines are different too. Not really. So it's just the texture. It's the texture that's different. But I don't know why. Like if they were just different printing presses, maybe they were printed at the same time. It's so interesting, right? I don't know. I'm fascinated by it. And then finally, wait, I already showed you that one. The Secret in the Old Attic. Did Summer said, or Shroom, did you say this is the one you had? And this dust cover is in pretty good condition, as you can see. And they've been laminated, so that's nice. And this is also this... I prefer this texture. I actually like this texture better. Yep, you have that one. Looks just like that. Cool, we match! Somebody colored in this one. it's pink. Yeah. I don't know. This one was owned by Pamela Feelhauer. This one was 1944. I am thinking this probably... I wonder if these were printed in like the 50s. Because these pages are a lot wider. They're more crisp. But it also could be that they were better taken care of or better stored. I think when I do my master's, I'm going to have to take like archiving or something because obviously I'm interested in it. Did you take anything like that, Lexi? Oh, she colored the back too. Oh, there's an advertisement for the Vicky Barr Flight Stewardess series. Ooh, I'd read that. That's cute. I need to go shopping for indie books. Oh, Joni, that would be so fun. I'd love to come with you. Anyways, those are my collective bluebacks. I hope to collect more in the future. I haven't seen any in Oklahoma. And I always look at the Nancy Drew section when I go to Half Price Books. But they're probably easier to find in like those hole-in-the-wall bookshops. Like the really second-hand, locally owned bookshops that aren't necessarily a chain. I love Half Price Books. They're great. I love what they stand for. They're still indie. Other than Pals, I think they're probably the largest chain indie bookstore. I don't know. I have Nancy's Mysterious Letter and Ivory Charm. Nice. Those are good ones. As well as Clue in the Attic. Is it Clue in the Attic? Do they have different titles? Mine is Secret in the Old Attic. But Clue in the Attic sounds accurate too. I don't know. Anyways. Yeah, I don't know. It could be. Like, there could be... I'm finishing Ivory Charm now. Oh, nice. Yeah, I think I saw that on your Goodreads. Which, by the way, Joni, anybody else who's here who did not hear earlier, we have a book club going. It's on Goodreads. Are we friends on Goodreads? Do you have Goodreads? Do I have my Goodreads on my social? I should add that. Let me add that real quick. That was a Nightbot, right? Yeah. So, social. You should... I would think you'd be able to find me with my username, but I'm not entirely sure because it's not worked in the past. Okay. Yeah. I will add that. So, if anybody would like to join the book club, oh, crap. How do you undo? I don't know how to work Windows. I'm on Windows on my streaming, and I'm so used to Mac. I exited a tab and I didn't mean to. How do you undo? Is there no undo? Control Z? No? I think I can go back and find it. So, yeah, if you don't have Goodreads, you can make a private account if you want. Our group is private, so you will have to either make a request or just make a Goodreads and friend me, and I will invite you to it. So if you want to join the book club, anybody's welcome to do that. It is private just because I want to keep it, within the indie fam, just so we're like intimate and we know each other and we can, discuss we can discuss with people we know, Your area has almost no used bookstores. What's that? There's a big one in... I don't feel like Gardner's right, because I feel like that's in Kansas. But there's one outside of Tulsa that's huge that is advertised. And I've been there once, and I found a lot of good stuff there. I don't remember if I looked for Nancy Drew books at the time. I was on a Meg Cabot kick when I was there, and manga, so that's what I looked for. But it was so huge, and I had limited time. So, I don't know if that's anywhere near you. But oh, it's called Gardner's. It is in Tulsa. It's called Gardner's. Gardner's Used Books and Comics. Yeah, and it's really big. It's really cool. Let me get you the website. Oklahoma's largest used bookstore. I bet they would, I'm sure they'd have Nancy Drew. I don't know what they would have in terms of variety, but I'm sure they would have Nancy Drew. I don't know if that's anywhere near you, but I would recommend that if you have the chance to go. Yeah, I'm really hyped too. So the first book that we're reading, I'm hosting this month. We're starting in February, so you still have plenty of time. We are reading a book called Girl Sleuth, Nancy Drew and the Women Who Created Her. I'm very excited. And since we are the indie fam, it's, we're rebooting the book club, and I decided to go to the Goodreads route to make it more formal and would help us keep on track and not die off like we did last year or the year before. But anyways, so that is what I have to say. And I will be heading off now. Thank you guys for being here. Oh, I will go look at those pictures, Summer. Very excited. No stream tonight. Possibly a Nancy Drew stream with Keegan on Sunday afternoon, maybe. I will have to confirm that, but I'll let you guys know on Discord. You find books at antique stores. Yeah, there's that too. Or thrift stores sometimes have books. Thank you for being here. Oh. Okay, Lexi and Joni are now VIPs. It's first come, first serve of people who regularly come to my channel, so there you go, guys. And I don't know how many. I think it's limited, but I don't know what I'm up to, so I'll have to check. Thank you guys for being here. I had a lot of fun. Next read stream will be, I think I'm gonna do once a week. So next Thursday is what I have scheduled, I think. But I will post that on Sunday or Monday. So, thank you guys for being here. I hope you have a good weekend, and I'll talk to you guys later. Bye.